Hi, this is Tara. Welcome to Sky Gazing. Today we're studying Sutra number 50, which is the penultimate sutra in the Samadhi Pada. So we have one more to go, and then we'll be beginning the Sadhana Pada from Monday. I'll be giving you a sort of summary episode, which will be separate, and then we'll start off the Sadhana Pada as well. So if you have any questions or anything you feel I've explained wrongly, made an error and need to clarify, either drop a comment wherever you're viewing or listening to this, or drop an email, and I will try and include it in the summary episode. So, onward to Sutra number 50. Tat-jaḥ saṃskāra-anya-saṃskāra-pratibandhī. That this job born, samskara are the unconscious tendencies, impressions, also dynamic consciousness, anya, other, pratibandhī, opposition or contradiction. Maharishi Ved Vyasa says the 50th Sutra is translated as residual potencies, born therefrom, impede other residual potencies. Born therefrom, born from truth-bearing knowledge, born from nirvicara samadhi. So when the transcognition has been achieved, the yogi acquires by the exercise of that cognition newer and newer residual potencies. The residual potencies born of trance meaning samadhi, impedes the outgoing vehicle of potencies. By overpowering the outgoing tendencies, notions due to them cease to exist. Simply put, once you have achieved truth-bearing knowledge, once you have achieved nirvicara samadhi, then the samskaras that arise out of that achievement impede the samskaras that previously lingered in the unconscious. So the one basically cancels out the other, suppresses the other. Swami Satyananda says dynamic consciousness born of that is sabija samadhi, prevents other states of consciousness. Okay, so a samskara is a dynamic state of consciousness. I also have a separate video on samskaras. If you want to just have a look, it's on my YouTube for those of you who are interested. I'll put the link below. A samskara is a dynamic state of superconsciousness in the deeper layers of the seed, that is bija, which can be awakened within the consciousness. So, samskara is not a state of dormant consciousness, but a state of dynamic consciousness. In the highest states of sabija samadhi, the consciousness of bija remains, but the consciousness of other objects is eliminated. So even in ordinary life, it is found that when one thought predominates in the mind, the others are subdued. In a similar manner, once you've attained the sabija samadhi, the highest states, then the samskaras that are present get sort of replaced or suppressed. So when the chitta is full of external awareness, such as seeing, hearing, feeling, and so on, that is also a dynamic consciousness, and that is to be prevented. That is what is meant by chitta vritti nirodha. So this can be done through pratyahara and dharana as well as dhyana. Pratyahara is withdrawal of the senses, dhyana is dharana is concentration, dhyana is meditation. When the mind is not engaged or concentrated, various thoughts arise. This happens in the lower stage of sabija samadhi also, where there are visions as well as chitta vrittis. So when ritambara prajna arises, the highest state of sabija samadhi is attained, then the other samskaras are not only prevented from arising, but they are finished, Swami Satyananda says. So they are basically eradicated. The three states, namely concentration, meditation, and samadhi, that is dharana, dhyana, and samadhi, together constitute samayama, which is a complete mental control over the awareness of the object. Through samayama, other states of consciousness vanish, but the seed remains. The seed, such as, say, a Shivalinga, is also called the pratyaya, the foundation, or the basis for consciousness. This happens in asampragnata, in asmita. From asmita, the aspirant takes a plunge into nirvija samadhi. For those of you who are interested, I think on in Patanjali's light on Yogasutras, uh, page 100, page 99, page 100 has a table that gives you the stages of samadhi and how they correspond to the sheaths of the body and what their sort of functions are. Page 100. Okay. So, so through samayama, the other states of consciousness vanishes, but the seeds remain. The seeds, such as the Shivlinga, is called pratyaya. It becomes the basis of consciousness. This happens in asampragnata and asmita. From asmita, the aspirant takes a plunge into nirvija. So until now, the consciousness was descending deeper and deeper and deeper, but it was not one with the drashta. So after sabija samadhi, there is an ocean called oneness with the drashta. So basically, what is happening is all the walls kind of implode. There is no separation anymore when you have reached nirvija samadhi. So two things should be remembered here. First, we must remove the misunderstanding, he says, that the spiritual path is a short path. This is a mistake of enthusiastic students and teachers. It must be corrected. Secondly, there should be clear understanding through meditation on the concrete form of consciousness. The moment that an aspirant has transcended sagunopasana, which is concrete form based, the first one that we studied on the fourfold forms of samadhi, he can go in for nirgunopasana after ritambara prajna. For example, in the case of Ramana Maharshi, who became a mukta from birth, he did not practice a sadhana. Certainly, those who are not spiritually developed, who have no voluntary control over their mental functions, should first practice sagunopasana. So, according to yoga, this whole range of upasana is divided into two categories, namely means and end. Meditation is a means to samadhi, dharana is a means to dhyana, pratyahara is a means to dharana. In the various states of samadhi, every lower state is a means to a higher state. Therefore, all these practices first break different patterns of consciousness and ultimately reach outside the range of Prakriti. Okay, so it's also that it's kind of like, Karate Kid example where for those of you who haven't watched it, the sensei basically is, he asks the sensei for teachings and the sensei says, okay, go wax my car, and he has to do it in a specific motion, which is wax on and wax off, and he has no comprehension of why, I'm here to learn martial arts, why am I doing this nonsense. There's also a pick up the jacket, wear the jacket, pick up the jacket, wear the jacket, and he has to do this day in and day out every day in true Zen fashion. And so at the end of it, when he gets angry and sort of confronts his teacher offers him a fight. And all those movements of arm and leg sort of come into use, and he realizes he's actually learned his I don't know, asanas. I don't know what they called in martial arts. But basically, that is the same thing that we are doing in asanas, right? When we're learning the asanas, or even when we're learning like very basic pranayama or yamas, niyamas, they are so essential because they are this foundation. And in our limited understanding, it may not look like it's adding up to this grand ladder up to liberation. Uh, but perhaps for standing from where we are, we can't see how it contributes. Kind of like, when you give a kindergarten kid the first cursive C's and A's, and they're like, wait, I want to be a literary author. Why am I writing C's and A's? And they don't see where this is going and what is the point and when will I ever use this. But the teacher does. And being a wonderful teacher, Swami Satyananda, that's what he's saying. He's saying, all these practices first break different patterns of consciousness. So there's also the unmaking of written habits in the mind, and then only they can sort of bring us to building new patterns of consciousness, which is the same principle of samskaras. If you listen to that video, there's also some explanation from Swami Vivekananda in that, where we all have specific mind patterns, and whether you follow Buddhist philosophy or Hindu philosophy or Sankhya philosophy, it really doesn't matter. At the fundamental core of it, what we are doing is we are working with mind training. And mind training is what? It's breaking down the established patterns of the mind. And why are they broken down? Because you're breaking down the samskaras that are so deeply rooted, not just from this life, not from a bad eating habit or a bad exercise habit or a bad living pattern in this life, but from many, many, many lives, thousands of lives. So there are ways we react, there are ways we see, there are ways we think that are so deeply embedded that they first have to be uprooted. Which is why when BKS Iyengar is talking about buddhi, he says that the longer you hold the asana, the greater chance of um, buddhi rising from the unconscious to the conscious happens. So, there are these. Why do we hold an asana? Why is it so difficult the longer the teacher's count gets? It's because we are breaking a habit pattern. The body wants to collapse, the body wants to contract. Why does it want to contract? Because the intelligence, the mind, the emotional, regulatory system is asking us to go another way because we've trained it that way. And so holding this pattern against the pain, against the instinct, is breaking a pattern. And then when those patterns are broken, buddhi rises from the unconscious to the subconscious to the conscious mind, if we're lucky. And then we're able to have new learning of knowledge. And that is kind of what Patanjali is explaining in this sutra to us, that the samskara that is gained from the new knowledge is so powerful that it completely uproots and negates, opposes, contradicts the existing samskaras. So we're able to break free. Swami Vivekananda says the resulting impression from this samadhi obstructs all other impressions. We have seen in the foregoing aphorism that the only way of attaining to that superconsciousness is by concentration. We have also seen that what hinders the mind from the concentration is samskaras. So what he's basically saying is, when you're trying to concentrate, so those of you who are learning meditation, those of us, and we see that this mind is wandering, it's running here and there, it won't stay still, it won't concentrate on breath for even just a moment. Swami Vivekananda says that happens because the chitta is filled with samskaras. It's filled with pre-existing impressions. Because we're constantly using the sense perceptions, hearing, seeing, tasting, touching, all of those impressions through many lives are sort of layered in the unconscious samskara storehouse, what the Buddhists call alya, but what we in Sankhya philosophy, it is just the mind, the deeper consciousness. So all these old impressions, Swami Vivekananda says, are basically like tigers ready to jump out at us. So this samadhi, which has just been given, is the best to be practiced on account of its power of suppressing the samskaras, he says. And the samskara, which will be raised by this sort of concentration, will be so powerful that it will hinder the action of the others and hold them in check. Of course, he says it very easily. It's not like we are reaching nirvicara samadhi tomorrow, but we can try, we can aspire. BKS Iyengar says a new life begins with this truth bearing light. Previous impressions are left behind and new ones are prevented. And when the power of the intellect springs from intense insight, that insight negates all previous residues of action, movement, and impression. So it's like this blaze of light that just clears it all out. And he refers back to Sutra number 45, where, which is Sukshma Vishayatvam Cha Alinga Paryavasanam. The subtlest level of nature's consciousness, and when consciousness dissolves into nature, it loses all marks and it becomes pure. So the sadhaka is again at the crossroads with new samskaras that may continue to emerge due to the oscillations of the mind, and this may impede real knowledge. So these mental impressions must be superseded by the power of discrimination, viveka, And when this happens, all doubts dissolve. When all doubts dissolve, then the sadhaka has to clear even his discriminative knowledge. And the new illuminating wisdom that results from that is free from doubt, it's free from discrimination. It blazes forth a glowing beacon of knowledge. Osho says that the perception gained in nirvicara samadhi transcends all normal perceptions, both in extent and intensity. So he says these two words are very meaningful, extent and intensity. And when you see the world through the senses, brain and mind, the world is very dull. It has no luminosity in it. But so now he gives the example of, say, you've used LSD or marijuana or something like that, and suddenly the tree looks more green. I would honestly wouldn't know, but I'll take his word for it. And he says when Aldous Huxley first took LSD, he was sitting before a chair, and suddenly the chair became one of the most beautiful things in the world. And that chair has remained in his room for years, and he never looked at it. So it was like a prism. So basically, the new perspective is born. And he says drugs are a violent way to awake idiots. So you shock them. But he's saying when you go into the mind and you use the power of the mind itself to awaken, then that is more lasting and that alters your perspective forever. Okay. So he says even somebody like Aldous Huxley was mixed up. He thought that this was the samadhi that Patanjali was talking about, and that Kabir had attained, and that Buddha had attained, and that all the mystics of the world had attained. But drug-induced samadhi is not samadhi. It is a temporary dropping of the guard. Okay. But it kind of shocks the mechanism by which our system functions. By dropping the inhibitions. And what happens when you drop the inhibitions is that you're not perceiving in that samsaric way, in the samskaric way, where with all your baggage sort of framing your lens. So this is, please don't do drugs. Okay, public service message. So Tennyson says that if I can understand a flower, a small flower in its totality, I would have understood it. And Osho says that that's right, because the perception gained in nirvicara samadhi transcends all normal perceptions. And so from everywhere vastness opens. Look into a flower and fall into an abyss. You can fall into the flower and disappear. And he tells this story of an emperor in China that had asked a great painter to come in and make a really beautiful landscape, which he did. And then when he finally finished it, all the emperor and his courtiers gathered around and said, oh, there's this beautiful path. And it was stunning. It was a stunning piece of work. And he said, where does this path lead? And the painter says, I don't know. And the emperor says, how can you not know? You're the one who painted it. And the painter said, oh, wait a minute, let me find out. And apparently he jumped into the painting, disappeared, and never came back. And Osho says, okay, it sounds like it can't happen, but he says in nirvicara samadhi, this can happen. In a flower is the abyss. Because of your intensity, you look into the flower and there is depth, and you fall into the flower and you disappear forever. Everything, he says, becomes a door. Everything. With your intensity of look, all the doors are open for you. Barbara Stoller-Miller says, a subliminal impression generated by wisdom stops the formation of other impressions. Past experiences recorded in memory, reason, and even intuition have no relevance to the realization of the state of pure contemplation. So even the subliminal impressions that remain are consumed, and all turnings of thought cease. This was Sutra number 50. Please do come back tomorrow for Sutra number 51. Thank you so much for listening.